Hello, and I thought we'd do something a little bit different. I've had a request to do more videos on this channel, and this idea was actually sort of given to me sometime in January, which was, why don't I do a tarot card reading for Anton Bruckner? So I sat with that idea, and this is the result. The reading was actually done on the 16th of February 2025, which is highly significant, but unfortunately persistent rain and strong winds have prevented me actually doing the recording of the reading. But what it did allow for was where I've been doing 7 card readings, 4 and 3. The idea then came, well, why not turn this into like a pyramid tarot, as it were. That's what I'm calling it. I'm not a trained tarot reader. It's just sort of something that's fell into my lap. So I thought, let's not do a reading for Anton Bruckner himself, but something that very much concerned Bruckner in the last 9 or 10 years of his life, and that is the Ninth Symphony. It's amazing what actually comes out of this, and it's, as much as anything else, it's combining two things in another way. I'd never considered actually doing a reading for anybody who's not in this reality before, let alone a piece of music which takes on a life of its own once the composer has passed. But as I've said on a previous video, Bruckner has not passed. What I mean by that is going with what Rudolf Steiner says, that if the human body, the physical body, is not allowed to go through its natural disintegration, that the soul becomes a disembodied being that still operates in this reality. And I feel Bruckner is very much still alive today in a disembodied form to oversee the message that he was trying to convey to humanity in this Ninth Symphony, in particular in the finale. So the reading is actually, I've always taken this as being sort of past, present and future, in the sort of in the moment, as it were. So it can be very recent past and looking very much to the very near future. And then from that was developed creating what's at the bottom of the deck, what's the underlying feelings that go into the question of the reading. So let's just turn the cards over. So this is about in the moment, in this reality. This is your sort of baseline. It's, as much as anything else, revolves around the earthly plane. And of course it needs a foundation, a structure, which is the underlying nature of the question. So we'll start with these and we'll see what comes out of this. So the underlying nature, it's the Justice card, it's number 11. It's almost like a doorway. Wanting to see justice, I feel in this case it is to have that realised 4-movement symphony that it was always intended to be. So going back from in this what's underlying the question of this reading, we've got the gift of trees. It's a fire card. the element of fire, so it's about passion. The Justice card is about honesty, self-knowledge, commitments to truth, and fair treatment, which I feel very much is to do with having this Ninth Symphony in its completed form with 4 movements. The gift of trees is the confidence and power as gifts and the determination, which it's taken really till in the last few years that this Ninth Symphony has been fully realised. You'll notice you've got 4 trees here, so it represents the 4 movements. You could almost see this figure here as representing the conductor. This circle, you could say, represents the orchestra. So you've got your 4 movements, you've got the communicating, the radiating out. This Ninth Symphony was born, represented here by the six of birds, the power of dreams, especially sacred or psychic, opening doors to the unknown, which this finale of this Ninth Symphony definitely does. And at the very root of this is the Ace of Birds. So you've got fire, you've got water, emotions, and you've got spirit, Ace of Birds. The owl is always associated with wisdom, with truth, looking deep into the mysteries of life and death, which this Ninth Symphony most certainly does. So there's the underlying base to this reading. So we come on to the present. So you have card number 19, the Sun. It's another fire card. It represents simplicity, optimism, joy, relief after a time of struggle. So we've had this nearly 100 years or so of the Ninth Symphony in its truncated form with just 3 movements. So it has been a time of struggle to get this 4th movement realised as best it can be. Next card is a spirit card, an air card, the Gift of Birds. It's about passion, it's about wildness, liberation, music, the outpouring of ideas. What an appropriate card to get for this reading. And then we have 9 of Rivers, which is emotions, water, flow. It's about healing, rebuilding after a loss. So it's about the realization of the 4 movements that is being expressed here. So I took this reading a stage, well, 2 stages further. It seemed logical. You have the underlying 4 to the past, present and future in the moment. So what does the higher hierarchies and the higher self of Bruckner himself have to say in this reading? Because this is not about a person per se, it's about a creation of a composer and where is this symphony going, as it were, in public acceptance. So what do we have for this? These 2 cards came out. The 5 of Birds and the Empress. So the 5 of Birds, again another air element card to do with spirit. So I would say this is the message from the higher hierarchies that is coming through. Allowing old pain to die away. Honest acceptance of loss. Healing from wounds. So it could well be, and it certainly is as things stand at the moment, there are missing folios for this Ninth Symphony. Now a lot of people will reject this last movement because they're saying it's not the hand of Bruckner in its entirety. I totally disagree with that, as explained by Nicholas Harnoncourt and Simon Rattle, two very outstanding composers who have gone a long way to championing this four-movement symphony as it should be. As Simon Rattle said, we've had a tradition of three movements, but are we to repeat history and take that same mindset as Edward Hanslick and be a bit of a stick in the mud and not allow progress? Art is reflecting nature. It is about flow. So we've had a three-movement symphony up to 1930. There was an accepted version because nobody had thought to actually compare the symphony as it was accepted with Bruckner's own hand by looking at the score of those three movements. So we then had a three-movement Ninth Symphony, which has had, say, 70, 80 years of tradition of that being the accepted thing. But I don't know about you, but the third movement, that farewell to life, just seems a passive acceptance, and it leaves me personally with a feeling of there has to be more. There must be more to discover. Is that it? Is that I get to the end of the life and I just have to accept that I'm going to transition out of the physical reality? But what does it open up to? It seems like quite an anticlimax in a way to look at it that way. So this Empress card, number 3, interesting because we're talking about a three movement and then bringing in that finale as being accepted, which I feel it will be. But the Empress, it represents passion for life, the world, nature, and earth, something that I feel Bruckner was very much had a passion for and expresses in the music. It is autobiographical across his symphony cycle. So you have this allowing the old pain to die away. This is Bruckner letting go of what has been lost. It could be, and it certainly is as things stand, that we don't have these missing folios, but there were sufficient sketches. And certainly it was played to Bruckner's doctor, Dr. Richard Heller, towards the end of his life. He actually heard that entire movement in its entirety. As Nicholas Harnoncourt says, it only required the finishing touches, putting in the instrumentation, what was going to be played by the woodwinds, what was going to be played by the strings and the brass and the timpani. But there are sufficient sketches to actually put all of this together with very little that is required to be added. But obviously there does require to be a little bit added, and it was done by 4 experts in music. Semele, Mazuka, Phillips, and Kors. That's the surname of the 4 composers in their own rights, who looked at Bruckner's composing technique and were able to realise this Ninth Symphony. But every time there is change, there is always resistance. There are always those that are not open to that change. But the whole idea that it was a 3-movement symphony, that was never the intention of Bruckner. Something he never did with any of his other symphony. He was very consistent to have 4-movement symphony, so why would the 9th be any different? One objection I've heard is, oh, it sounds so different. But that's as ridiculous as saying, well, Beethoven's 9th Symphony finale sounds totally different from his first symphony. Composers progress, they evolve, they bloom, so the music that they compose is also going to change. So let's come on to this last card now, the top tier. This, shall we say, is the voice of the Oversoul, God, the Almighty, the Dear Lord, whatever you want to call it. And we've got another 9, the 9 of birds. This would seem to suggest it's another spirit card, which is what the birds represent, an air card, the air element. The card's meaning is grief, sadness, empathy for suffering of others. I see this Oversoul, this creator, as being the ultimate artist that has given us, if we just go to the window, don't know how well you can see it, just look at nature. It's a picture that can't actually be framed, it's always constantly changing. So this message with this 9, it's funny that it's the number 9, it's not the first number 9 we've had in this reading. We've had the 9 of rivers, now we have the 9 of birds. When I did the reading, and it is about Bruckner's 9th Symphony, the 16th of February, so we take the 1 and the 6 and the 2 of the 2nd, sorry, no, it's March, isn't it? I don't know why I put February down here, so that actually becomes a 10. But there is a third 9 in the year 2025, so if we add the 2 and the 2 and the 5, you're going to get another 9. You also have a 9 with a 1 in the Sun card, because 9 is completion and 10 is about stepping into the unknown, something new that goes beyond the 9. So this divine message in the reading, grief, sadness, empathy for suffering of others. How many artists have, shall we say, idyllic lives with no concerns, no worries? Certainly Bruckner went through a stage where he couldn't even afford manuscript paper, which must be rather frustrating for an artist. And you can certainly look at the lives of many artists, painters, composers. They don't have easy lives. But it's the art spirit that is permeating as a medium through the artist that creates the art. So they often have this life of suffering. And this is why there is this reassurance that there is empathy for it, but it is a calling, and if you have that call as an artist, then in some ways nothing else matters but to get that message out. And I feel that is what Bruckner was doing with this 9th Symphony. The last movement does sound different from the previous 3 because it is talking about the otherworldly. It is talking about the beyond, what comes next. 4 is a door, so the 4th movement is that doorway, that gift of trees. So the justice, coming from this new idea, from this divine wisdom that is permeated through the medium of Anton Bruckner, it is time to see justice. That is not to negate all those fantastic recordings by some very esteemed conductors of the past. It's not discarding all that has been, but putting it into historical context, that we do have this realization. This 5 of birds card from the higher realms is saying about accepting loss. It may well be that those missing folios are never found. But it's as close as we're ever going to get in this present moment. Maybe those folios will turn up. Maybe it will even show that the realization that we have at present is not that far different from what Bruckner had intended in his mind. But unfortunately, he left this world, as it were, separated from the physical body before it could be really fully put down as an orchestral score. Although it was, but of course there's those missing folios. Allegedly souvenir hunters, but I feel it's far more than that. It's someone who did have an understanding of what Bruckner was trying to convey, and that's why they've gone missing. But I also see the hand of the great art spirit involved in this. No accident that those folios have gone missing, because that message was not for that time. Bruckner was writing very much for ahead of his time. I would say 100 years ahead of his time, and that is why we have the realization of that finale that is becoming more and more accepted. There are always going to be those that are sort of stick in the muds and, no, I'll only accept the 3 movements. Well, all I can say to those that take that perception is you are missing out. You are doing not only Bruckner a disservice, because if you adhere to what Bruckner requested, it was to use the Te Deum as the 4th movement. To accept it as just 3 movements leaves a sort of almost a feeling of it's unfulfilled, it's missing something. That's what I've always felt about it. It was my first introduction to Bruckner, this 9th Symphony. So I thought, let's do a reading, thanks to the inspired idea that was given to me to do a reading for Anton Bruckner. But I thought, let's go with what mattered to Bruckner. I just sat with the idea, and when it felt right to do a reading, and even the subject matter of the reading, I thought we'll go with that. So that is the reading. Make of it what you will. Art is subjective. You may not agree with the findings of this, but don't shoot the messenger. I'm just myself a medium that is giving an interpretation of what is basically shown in the artwork on the cards. That's where the message shines through, as it were, from the actual cards themselves. Here again we have this balance, and you have this 4, which I find interesting as well. Here we have the 9 of rivers. You'll see that it's an outpouring. It's also expressed, you could say, as the figure of a man holding a picture, and it's the outpouring. It's not the water, because Aquarius is an air sign, not a water sign. So this here is reflected. The 9 is an outpouring. It's the gift of the sun that was shown to Bruckner. He had the last rites read 3 times towards the end of his life when he was writing this 9th Symphony, which I feel he had to go through those experiences in order to write this finale, because he is talking about a world of what comes next. The stepping into the unknown. So I, for one, hope that we do see justice. We do see the sun, the rising of this, and the acceptance of this 4-movement 9th Symphony as it was always intended to be. it is about something new. It is with wisdom, as shown in these cards. So I hope you've liked this interpretation from what I see in these cards. I hope it also gives you, if you have any knowledge of the history of the Ninth Symphony, that it gives you a sort of a taster of, if you want a one-to-one card reading yourself, that I can give you that. The links are will be in the description. But make of it what you will. Shoot the messenger. I'd be wrong to say that this reading is not coloured by my own feelings about the Ninth Symphony, which I think you've probably gathered by now that I am all for the 4-movement Ninth Symphony. Interestingly, the 9 and the 4, you add them together, you've got 13, so you've got almost a reference to a Christ figure and 12 disciples that are shown in that as well. Right, I think we'll end that there, and I thought something a little bit different for this channel this time, but I will share it on my main channel as well, a link to this video. Right, that's all I have to say on this. Maybe it's not the final word. Maybe in time we'll be able to do another reading that will also reflect the progress of the acceptance of this 4-movement work, Bruckner's Ninth Symphony in D minor. As always, unconditional love to you all.